We go now to Seattle, where this week several blocks of one neighborhood were shut down in order for protesters to hold demonstrations against racial injustice and police brutality. The police there vacated the precinct. It's a situation that has drawn considerable criticism from President Trump. Joining us now is Seattle Police Chief Carmen. Good morning to you, Chief.
Good morning, Margaret. Thank you so much for having me here.
I want to talk about what's happening in your city, but first off, I want to give you a chance to respond to what you just heard the two senators talking about, which is how you do your job. What do you think of these proposals?
Well, I can tell you, Margaret, I think all the time about how we might improve policing and what we're experiencing in the field every day. I absolutely believe in accountability, but I think we've moved away from using the word reform. We were under a consent decree in the Seattle Police Department for almost a decade. We followed every rule and everything that was asked of us to do.
That was the Justice Department looking at whether there was a pattern or practice of bias in policing. That's what you're referring to.
Yes, and that's what the consent decree is. And essentially, they laid out a roadmap and a game plan for us to follow while they reviewed us with the federal monitor. But what I believe, especially after I was at a march yesterday, or the day before yesterday, with Black Lives Matter, and I was looking at the 60,000 people that were there, signs saying, defund the police, stop police brutality, no qualified immunity. And there were thousands of people carrying those particular signs. And I just realized it was a moment, an epiphany, that this is a pivotal moment in history. We are going to move in a different direction, and policing will never be the same as it was before.
What do you think specifically of reducing immunity?
Well, I think that's really a conversation for the politicians and the judicial people to have about how that works and what that looks like. I think there are various iterations that have been proposed, and I think that is a better discussion in that arena. But I do believe that the considerations of the public need to be infused in whatever that outcome is.
Okay.
So I would have to defer to that as a better forum to have that discussion. I can say.
Sorry, let me just take a real quick break here because I want to talk to you and give you time to explain what is going on in Seattle right now. Let's take that commercial break and continue the conversation with Police Chief Best in our next half hour. Welcome back to Face the Nation. We want to continue our conversation with Seattle Police Chief Carmen. Chief, thank you for staying with us. There's a lot of focus on your city. Republican lawmakers have called this 6-block area that the police had left and that protesters are occupying. They're saying it's like a war zone, that warlords are running rampant. The president himself has said domestic terrorists have taken it over. You're the police chief. What is happening in this so-called Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone?
Well, there are people who have occupied the area. My understanding is they've actually changed the name to the Capitol Hill Occupied Protest area. There are a lot of folks there, a lot of differing objectives and agendas, and people who have congregated into the area. One of our real challenges there is trying to determine who is a leader or an influencer that seems to change daily. I know that many of our city officials and others are trying to establish some sort of communication with someone who can give us some direction about what the intent is and how we might move forward.
So I had read reports in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere that there were negotiations underway with Black Lives Matter who were saying they didn't want to hand over control until funding to the police was cut. You're saying it's actually not that clear of a negotiation. How long will this last?
Yeah, those are great questions. I wish I had the answer to how long it might last. I can tell you that we want to move it forward as quickly and efficiently as possible. But my concern as a police chief, besides that I want to be back in our precinct doing the work, is that we don't want anyone there to be harmed. We don't want this to be something that devolves into a forced situation. So we're really trying to take a methodical, practical approach to reach a resolution where everyone gets out of here safely.
But you believe it's peaceful, just to be clear?
For the time being, yes,
Okay.
it is.
You are a police chief, and I just wonder, when you look at what has happened overnight in Atlanta, where this shooting occurred, the 2 officers involved are under scrutiny. One of them was fired. The police chief herself resigned, even though she was not present or overseeing this directly at that moment. And I wonder, given all the tension, what it is like to be a police chief right now. Do you feel like there is just zero room for any kind of error? And have you changed the way you're doing your job?
Well, certainly, I'm sure you're probably aware of the temporary restraining order that does not allow us to use pepper spray or gas, flashbangs or CS. So in some ways, that's already been a change that we're having to work through. I can tell you this, I was mentioning earlier that I was at the Black Lives Matter march, and I saw many people carrying signs about defunding the police, ending police brutality, and looking at resolving the qualified immunity issue. So I know, standing there watching and listening, that we're going to change in policing. We have to. It has to be a movement that involves everybody. We need to reimagine and refigure out, if you will, how we're going to move forward as a country and as an organization to make things better for everybody. It's incredibly difficult, but with every challenge, there's opportunity. There's opportunity to move forward and bring people together and get positive change. I absolutely believe that. So some stressful situations are not going to deviate me or my organization from leading the way and trying to make things better for all of us.
Well, Chief, good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.